G'day. Welcome to episode number 13 of the Cold-Blooded Contributions podcast. We're your hosts, the Ipers. I'm Scott Iper. With me is my wife, Ty Iper. This podcast will bring to you people in the hobby who have made an impact on us creatively, be it artistically, data, improving husbandry, field herping extraordinaire. Today we're stoked to have with us Brian Bush. G'day, Brian. How you going, mate?
I'm going great, Scott. How are you going?
Oh, I'm going all right, mate. I'm going all right.
Good to have you with us, Busho.
Oh, no worries, Ty. You're there too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got to have the intelligent one with us, mate. So.
She's to keep us on the straight and narrow.
Her bloody work's going to be cut out for her tonight, mate.
Yeah, just trying to keep up.
Yeah, that's it. Well, mate, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah. I was born on the 16th of June, way back in 1947, and I was born at a place called Brighton-le Sands, which is a suburb of Sydney.
Yeah.
So I grew up in that area, out at the Ghana, Penshurst and Peakhurst, and my dad was a stonemason. People often say, how did you get into reptiles? Well, it was just a natural history interest, I think, in the family. But my dad, being a stonemason, used to cut his own sandstone, so he was always in the bush. And anything that turned up didn't have to be a reptile, but could have been a large beetle or something like that. He'd often bring it home. But reptiles was what I was drawn to as a boy. So he'd bring home the reptiles, and eventually that's all he would bring home and show me and then take them back when he was going back out into the bush. But yeah, it was just something like a glow came over me when I saw a reptile. Even as a 4 or 5 year old, I'd be chasing the skinks in the garden.
Yeah. Did you like dinosaurs and stuff like that as a kid? Do you reckon that might have been where it come from? Or
no, I don't think so. A lot of my family, like my grandfather in the 40s, exported Australian parrots under licence. He was a trapper exporter of Australian parrots, but I think they don't do that much of that anymore. Dad was one of 7 blokes.
Wow.
One of my paternal uncles used to collect for Sir Edward Horstrom. You've probably not heard of Sir Edward Horstrom, but used to collect animals all around the world for Sir Edward Horstrom. So that there's a genetic interest, and a lot of the family were into birds, you know. As I said, my grandfather was a trapper, but a lot of them are into trapping birds for the pet trade and things like that. So there was that natural history interest, but I was the only one that led towards reptiles.
well, phylogenetically speaking, mate, birds are reptiles anyway. So you know,
yeah, for sure.
You know, so they were into herps, just the feathered variety. That's all.
Yeah, the feathered variety. So that's the interest of reptiles, and I just couldn't help myself. And when I was a bit older, I used to jump on my push bike and go further out. So my mates used to see the enthusiasm in me. Occasionally they'd come along, but they're usually bored, pretty quick, wandering through the scrub, turning rocks and that. And, I'd be all excited over a coppertail skink, and they'd be looking at me like I was a bit of a nut. But I got lost in herpetology. I tended to be happy on my own, so I always described myself as a bit of a loner. But just the thought of knowing the reptiles were in the area where you were was quite comforting.
Yeah, it's a means for excitement too. You sort of get out there and you're seeing little things and little pieces of ecology and how the wildlife interact with the environment. It's something certainly very special about field herping, that's for sure.
What have you kept over the years, Busho?
Well, I haven't kept a lot. When I say I haven't kept a lot, nothing fancy. I used to keep marsh snakes and whip snakes and small-eyed snakes, all the smaller stuff. Yeah. And I used to grab red-bellied blacks and tiger snakes and eastern browns and take them home too. And I got into the manure a little bit because I was a member of the Australian Herpetological Society, and their ruling was that under 18s couldn't have much to do with venomous snakes. But there was a group of us youngsters when we went on field trips and that, and all the oldies had walked past the bloody thing, it'd be a metre from the track. So if we young blokes weren't there with our good eyesight, a lot of these animals wouldn't have been there for them to examine because they required us youngsters to catch them. Maybe they still was there and just walked past so they didn't take a bite.
So what year was this, mate? How far back are we going?
We're going back to when I was probably,
15 or so? 14, 15?
Yeah, 14, 15, but under that 18
So around 1950 odd or so.
Yeah, I'm just trying to do a calculation here. 47, 50, 60. Around
1960. Okay, yeah. So would Bill Hosmer and those sort of people being the Australian Herp Society back then, I think, from memory. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I know Bill Irvine.
Yeah.
Hal Cogger used to come along and do presentations for the meeting, and tell us how he used to set the country on fire. So, I mean, that sounded exciting. So every time I was in Spinifex country, when I got the opportunity and the wind was in the right direction, I used to do my little bit for allowing the buffle grass to proliferate by taking out the triodia.
That's it, mate.
It's just my stupid personality, but it was great days back then. But as I said, there was a few of us who were in the poo for grabbing venomous snakes. I only got a 6 months suspension, but there were three of us. One got a life ban from the society, and another mate, good swine first. I think he got a suspension as well. But there was one bloke that got banned from the society altogether.
Oh, that was a bit cheeky. When I last caught up with you, well, not the last time, but the time before I caught up with you, you still had Kirk. Have you still got Kirk, the big old Mulga snake, or is he still kicking, or is he gone to greener pastures, so to speak?
Yeah, he's gone to greener pastures. But how long ago were you over here? But 2017 he died, and when I measured him, he went 289 centimetres, and his tail was 46 centimetres.
He was on the Gold Coast.
He was a bloody big snake. Yeah, that would have been about,
15 years
I
ago,
reckon that was 2015, I reckon, I think.
Yeah, so that would have only been probably within 3 years of you playing with him, meeting him.
Playing with him probably a pretty fair off.
Come on, let's call it what it is, Busho.
That's a pretty fair comment.
But I got it in 1993, that snake, and it was a youngster then that you could add 12 months onto it. So the total time was probably 24, 25 years.
Yeah, okay. So it's surprising. A lot of people don't realise when you keep them properly and you give them a decent cooling period and stuff like that and don't overfeed the hell out of them, they live for a bloody long time.
Oh, yeah, I'm surprised how long some reptiles do live for. I had a carpet python I had from juvenile, lived 33 years. Yeah. I got a bobtail here I got in 95 as an adult visit, and still going strong.
Yeah. So, is that Barry Bobtail?
That's Barry, and he looks like a young lad. I put a female near him, he gets all frisky.
Oh, good work.
He was wearing a sombrero the other day trying to chat up this young wild one that had a bit of bougainvillea that had fallen on her head.
Yeah, lovely.
What got you into photography, Busho?
I think it was a means to an end. Cameras weren't much around when I was a youngster. The family had a box brownie, which was no good for photographing herp. And when I turned 21 for my 21st birthday, an auntie gave me one of those Kodak Instamatic cameras. The ones with a little square of there was 4 flashes in a stuck on the top, and it turned each time. Yeah. But it wasn't until I moved over here in 76 that I got my first SLR camera. But it was a film camera, but single lens reflex camera, and started to get some really decent shots. But one decent shot, 100 bad shots. The trouble is, you didn't know you had bad shots until the
you paid for it.
Processed and the slides came back from Kodak.
Yeah.
Well, I remember you talking to me about wherever you used to photograph things over in WA, that there's always cigarette butts on the ground. It was a problem when you were taking photos.
Yeah, and the mates don't let me forget that, giving the smokes away. But Brad, me, Bruce Budry and that, I mean, we went anywhere, people could see the smoke signals coming out of the eagle. But sometimes I'd tell them when they rubbish me, it was just the area, a Jew guy here, close proximity to human dwellings and that. There's old sardine cans and nappies, cigarette butts, and everything in their natural habitat today.
Yeah.
Well, that's just it, isn't it? It's the new nature, as you say, isn't it?
Yeah.
The way that the animals live in urban environments now, and that they can do so much better. And I do wonder if some of the species like jugites and eastern brown snakes and things like that actually do better around with people because people have sort of cleared the land. They've improved the amount of prey in regards to small mammals that are around. They provide thermal refuges for them. We give them the food, we give them a place to live, and then we wonder why they turn up in their backyards.
Yeah, I agree totally. And if you look at most places where people lived in village environments and weren't as mobile as the indigenous people of Australia, house snakes evolved. They're usually colubrids, but you could argue that the pseudonea are the ecological equivalents of the overseas house snakes, just that they're highly venomous snakes, which is problematic for the people that have them in the backyards.
Well, they're only venomous if they bite you, mate. No.
That's correct, yeah.
Are you a night owl, Busho, or an early bird? When are you most productive?
Well, from a theoretical perspective, I'm out of bed about 4:30 in the morning, and I can usually get to about 10 o'clock on the computer. But when in the field, just depends, but if it's in the Pilbara in the summer or out in the goldfields in the summer, you've got to be a night person. Yeah, I develop a few tricks for getting diurnal stuff at night, like checking crevices and cracks in timber and things like that, with the torch. And often you can tickle the reptiles out much easier when it's dark than you can. That's the diurnal stuff.
Yeah.
You can when it's daylight, but because of the high temperatures, they usually move back deeper and deeper into the rock crevices or the cracks and that in the timber.
I think particularly things like tinnitus and stuff like that are so active at night still. And you get varannas active at night and all the rest of it. And then the agamas are easy as well because they're usually asleep in branches or down a burrow. It's easier to get those half the time at night than it is during the day.
Oh, for sure. And nothing's better than going through an area that has recently burned. The density of animals there or reptiles seems to be still pretty high, but because there's little cover, you can do really well, and they are a little bit bedazzled at night time, so even an old man like myself can pounce on them quite easy.
Yeah, well, it's a bit easier for a young fella like you, mate. The other thing that I've noticed as well is that dragons in particular seem to be brighter at night almost. They're almost as bright as what they are when they're in their full breeding / excited coloration, you know what I mean? They don't seem to be super dull at night.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting things I found with a lot of the dragons. I do the same thing, go out for them at night time, climb the outcrops or depending what I was chasing, but go after them by head torch. You can get onto an outcrop and you might be able to grab quite a series of individuals from the outcrop to examine. But the male chest patches in things like western ringtail dragon is gone at night. But once you get hold of it and it wriggles in your hand, it becomes obvious again. It develops. But it's almost like when they're in a relaxed state under a rock, it fades away.
I wonder if there's an energetic cost, a metabolic cost to produce that black pigment. And so when they don't need it at night, it just disappears. So
yeah, probably is something like that going on.
They're the ultimate machine in regards to energy conservation, aren't they?
Oh, for sure, yeah.
What's your average week look like these days, mate? You're not out doing snake safety training anymore and teaching people how to chase snakes into bags. What are you doing these days? What's your week look like?
Well, as I said, I'm a bit of an early bird. I like to get up early. I'll be out of bed at 4:30, and there's always something to fiddle with or something to play with here. It's been damn freezing, and I'm just waiting for it to get a little bit warmer, and I'll be whipping out chasing geckos at a place called Westonia. I was just going through my slides a while back and got these spiny-tailed geckos, and they're not spinigerous. They've got to be something else. And all the work going on, splitting geckos up, I thought I'll have to go out and get a bit of tissue for the museum.
So what this will be, let's see if you can get a Strophuris bushy to go with the Varanus bushy and the ill-fated Suta Gouldi bushy that did disappear.
They got sick of me elevating that to full species over here.
How did you find that one, mate? That was under a car tyre or something, wasn't it?
No. I got several of them all at the one location. It was like a rubbish dump, but the furthest distribution was probably only within a kilometre. It was like a relical stand of mallee, and they seemed to be existing there. So when it was described, it looked like it might have been extinct before but as it turned out, it was synonymised because of the genetics.
Is that because you just upset Brad? I think Brad was on that paper that sunk it, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Good mate he is.
yeah. Splitting and joining. It goes on and on and on, doesn't it? Splitting and joining.
That's it.
What's an average week like? Well, it's amazing that I sit still long enough in the cold weather anyway, but at least when it's warm, I can drive around here and just see what's active,
Yeah.
I don't have to bag it or catch it, but if it's a nice individual, I'll photograph it anyway. So, I still maintain my opportunistic collecting licence for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And even though I'm not working so much now.
What's your favourite thing about writing the natural history publications that you've worked on over the years?
I think, again, that you put the effort in and you enjoy it and everything else, but the flow on from that enjoyment is sharing the information. Just like you and Ty with your books. You do this to give people an appreciation of these organisms and try to encourage others to have the quality of life that they've provided us. That's what it's all about.
You certainly don't do it for the money, do you?
No. I mean, that's still part of that package. It's so rewarding. I'm always telling people about herpetology and heroin, and both of them are addictive. But herpetology is far more positive than the heroin.
Yeah, and besides, you're not going to give up herpetology either.
No, you can't give it up.
Once you're hooked, mate, you're hooked. There's no giving it up.
That adds to your quality of life. I'm pushing 80, or I'm not yet. I've got a couple of years to go, but it just keeps you so damn motivated. But you're happy. You can't be sad if you're into herpetology.
You can literally go around the globe chasing things and seeing obscure things in obscure places, and the experiences that you get from that are second to none. They really are.
I'd say the worst thing is the empty bank account and pursuing it.
Yeah, well, that's right.
Yeah, well, that's where I've been fortunate, because my work for the last 35 years put me in the field. Yeah, I could never stay in a donga. I'd always be swagging it up the road.
Definitely. Can you share with us a professional piece that you're most proud of, Busho?
Yeah, there's probably a couple from a herp perspective. Probably being involved with Brad Marion and rediscovering the atomic worm lizard. Keep in mind, it was described in 1956, but first collected by a bloke named Hill on the Mite Island in 1952. Now, it's not been seen since, and the government have been out looking for it, and that people have been out looking for it. But Brad and I were fortunate to get two at the type locality on Mite Island, and then we visited another island and got two there. So, from most people's perspective, it looks like a little bit of fishing bait, but just the challenge of trying to find it and being fortunate enough to find it.
You've got a pretty incredible name, the atomic worm lizard. Is there a bit of a story about the atomic side of things?
Well, only because Ken Applin, he was at the CSIRO at the time, and he asked us to have a look for it, but it had been described, but not sighted again. And the individual, Hill was a gentleman doing work, he's an Englishman doing work on the islands prior to the atomic test undertaken by the English.
Yep.
And his mate worked at the British Museum of Natural History, and his mate said to him, "Can you grab us a few plant and animal specimens?" And amongst those, he wasn't a herp, he was just a bloke probably with a natural history interest, but motivated by his friend at the British Museum of Natural History, and he collected two of these Aprasia rostrata. We don't know whether he got them in his tent, because he also collected things like Larista bipes and that, and he may have got them in his tent, but he, as I said, collected them. And one went to the British Museum of Natural History and one went to the WA Museum, and never been sighted again. Time, I think Glenn Storr came along and named a similar thing from the mainland, and he put the name Fusker on.
Yeah.
Ken Applin wanted to know what was going on, so he asked us to have a look. So the reason we coined the name atomic worm lizard is because we thought maybe the atomic radiation had destroyed it, but it's probably on more islands. We extended it to another island, which is Tremille Island, and we got two from there as well.
So they did atomic testing on that island, and you went there after the atomic testing and you turned these things up. I suppose the interesting part with that is that after a nuclear bomb goes off, it doesn't necessarily mean that the fauna is going to be stuffed. It finds a way to keep going, eh?
Yeah, well, that was the amazing thing. We expected when we got over there, we might find some reptiles still existing, but we expected them to have 5 limbs instead of 4. Or missing, deformities caused by the radiation. They had on that island. 4 months later, there was massive piles of dead turtles. I don't know if there's been any follow-up work, but it'd be interesting because if the turtles return to the same beach to deposit their eggs, what's the foundation of the population that still exists? I mean, there was juveniles amongst the thousands that were dead on the beach and old adults, so it'd be interesting to see if they're still utilising that beach and the radiation had taken out the whole population.
What were the densities on the island like for other reptiles? You said you only found a couple of the aprasia.
Yeah, that's the hard work in finding them, but everything was common.
Yeah, okay.
Birds were common, the reptiles were common. We thought we'd rediscovered the spectacled hair wallaby, which was believed to be extinct on the islands, but that was not related to the radiation or the atomic test. That was more related to bats and rats that came off ship.
Yeah.
So, but as it turned out, the hair wallabies on the island were rufous hair wallabies, and I think the government had released them, whether it was an experiment to see if they exist. But they seem to be doing fine. Yeah, I would have expected the island to be like a glacier. The sand had been turned to glass, but for the vegetation to be so dense and the diversity to be retained. But as typical of most islands, the population densities were high.
Yep.
Yeah, the aprasia, I mean, you're looking for aprasias in sand and that.
It's a bit like looking for aprasia in a sand dune, as opposed to a needle in a haystack.
yeah, not a needle in a haystack, and aprasia on a sand dune or in a sand dune.
That's it.
But, no, it's great to actually find it. You know what it's like. You go away to target something and you don't mind not getting it because you can go back again. But it's good when you do get it. There's a sense of satisfaction.
Definitely. So how long ago was that? You said they were blowing things up in the 1950s, I think you were saying.
Yeah, 1952 was when the first test went off, and that was at Tremulli Island where we got a couple of these things. It was a 25 kiloton device.
Yes.
I've always thought it was a land-based explosion, but it was 400 metres off the island in the hull of a ship. I think it was 14 metres of water, but they put planes and things like that on the island to see what sort of damage it would do, and yet the island's strewn with bits of aluminium and whatnot.
Well, that makes it good for chasing reptiles, I suppose.
Yeah. The ants like to make nests under the acacia stumps or anything that's laying on the ground, and the more stuff laying on the ground, I mean, the more work it is finding them, but at least you got places to look. If you didn't have anything laying on the ground, he'd have backed his chance trying to rape you the whole island.
It makes it tough, doesn't it?
It's tough.
And tedious.
Who would you like to collaborate with if you had the opportunity, living or dead?
Oh, I don't know. Most people go over my head. I am a bit of a loner, Float around out there, just do my own thing. It is, poor Doherty, when Ken Appleton was alive, they said they wanted something. You'd go out and have a poke around trying to find it. Yeah, and that's probably related to my work because if you employ someone, they've got to be inducted to site, and then you've got workers' compensation and all the other additional costs.
Yeah.
I was cheap. I was happy if I had to take a few to get to the next job. But the work was basically a means to an end. It kept Judy happy, the wife. She was happy because there was an income, and I was happy because I was in the field. I think she was also happy because I wasn't home.
I'll be honest, the bed to yourself is fantastic.
Yeah, well, it makes the heart grow stronger, they tell me.
Yes, absence does it. Yes. Can you share with us any unique or unconventional approaches you've taken in the field?
Yeah, well, just trying to think something unconventional.
Well, what's the origin of raking for herps? Because that's something that always seems to be that it's been like a bit of a foreign thing over east. It's not something over in Eastern Australia that's done very often. And it's something that you've certainly read about it in the early monitor magazines and and stuff like that in the 80s and 90s. And it seemed to be something that you guys did a hell of a lot of over there in WA. So how did the raking coming about and then using the three-pronged cultivator to go and chase stuff up?
Well, I found the same experience. I come across in '76, and we never done any raking when I was in the east side of the country. But over here, it's still sand. I mean, you get a lot of larricis and that living on hard ground, but usually under acacias and that where they've got the leaf litter they live in. But WA is the home to larricis and apraesias, probably because it is sand. That's why the Western Australians are called sand gropers, I suppose. You can't go anywhere without your rake. You've got to have your rake. But so many of the fossorial snakes and that you find with the rake, just you walk through some of this country where there's nothing on the ground and you think, how do you find a hurt? Rake. Yeah. Rake and rake.
It's bloody backbreaking.
He's always at a chiropractor getting his back fixed and that from raking because, he's pretty short-legged anyway. I'm a bit taller, but I used to carry a small rake and a bigger rake so I could get out on my hands and knees. Yeah. And do the raking from that lower position, so you're under the vegetation. But the longer one's great because you can work your way around it. But you miss more than you get. It depends on the time of the year, and if it's warm, there's nothing to find because they're all gone deeper into the sand where it's cool and damp. And when it's cool, that's sometimes the best time where the sun's on the ground, they move to the surface, that's thermal regulation chasing the warmth. But no, you can't go anywhere without a rake over here.
It's bloody addictive. The first time I had a crack at it over there, I got both knee laps and neurophis. And just seeing that little bright orange flash in the soil, I was hooked, It was bloody good.
Probably beginner's luck too.
There was no fucking skill involved, mate. It was all tin ass.
But it often happens like that, You can have a good day and you can have a bad day. And sometimes people have too many bad days and I think this raking is crazy. But you have a good day and then you think, oh, gee whiz, how easy is that? Because you forget the wear and tear on the back and the arms and whatnot because you were successful.
Yeah, I remember looking at the snake and being bloody happy. I don't remember the blisters and all the rest of it on my hands over it.
Yeah, I just remembered another unique situation that I get myself into on a regular basis when I used to do the snake management courses. Yeah. At the end of the course, I'd get everyone in a circle and we'd do a bonding exercise. Yeah. And the bonding exercise consisted of the sideways movement of the hips while I did an inspection. And although it's crazy, it was to remind them not to get complacent. You get ready to change direction in a hurry if you had to. Yeah. You can see your management from FMG or someone, BHP, they're all out there wriggling their backsides, looking at each other saying, what the bloody hell are we doing this for? To be honest, they loved it. It's just something different, but completed the course. I did one group and they had their T-shirts made up, Snake Catcher 98 or whatever on their T-shirts. They only did it as a character building exercise, a bonding exercise with the company. None of them would ever go out catching snakes. It is character building for those people with an aversion to them.
It's funny though, like the amount of people over the years that I've trained in mines myself, and any of the ones that have come over from over west, they turn around and tell me about how you taught them and all the rest of it, and what a different experience it was and how much fun they had. And I never used to have too much grief with the ones that you trained as well. So that was always nice.
Yeah, well, it's the character that was doing the work, but today I'd never get a job. I was pretty down to earth and an Aussie larrikin, and nowadays I even used to get them to answer an honesty survey. One of my favourite pieces of equipment is a mirror, but it's a mirror that fits in my pocket. Yeah. And I'd pull it out and say you can reflect light up logs and in cracks and that during the daytime with a mirror, and
don't have to worry about batteries.
I asked them if they ever squatted over one. While in the nude.
Oh no.
So what you're saying is now you're a HR nightmare. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah. I got more complaints towards the end of my working life than I got in the beginning. I mean, one of the amazing things is how many honest people are actually out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they squatted over a mirror because they had a bad dose of hemorrhoids or something.
Oh,
Again, it
God.
had a purpose because it used to relax them. That was usually done preceding the capture of the snakes. So
Yeah.
it just rebooted their minds. The crazy behaviour had a purpose at the end of the day. And I've never had a serious bone in my body since I fell out the back of Dad's ute as a 4-year-old and landed on my head.
Who do you admire most in your professional circle? Who was your mentor? Was it Glenn Storr to a point? Because he seemed to look after a few of you guys in WA.
Yeah, I thought Glenn, Ken, and even Paul, they've been great so far as the encouragement. Yeah, but they come from a totally different perspective, being taxonomists. I often joke, I met Brad, Rob Brown Cooper, Dave Robertson, and he's turned 60 this weekend, just gone. But I met these guys when they were children. Yeah. And I took them under my wing, and I'm pretty rough, but I looked upon them as my apprentices. Yeah. So, we were going into an old house in the wheat belt, track down the owner, and have a yarn to him. Explain, I've got my apprentices with me and I'm training them how to catch reptiles. Do you mind if we go and turn a bit of tin around the old building? It turned out to be a case of the proteges becoming the mentor. Brad, I suppose it's probably related to the fact that he never married, but Brad is like a book in himself. So, you take Brad anywhere and he eats, sleeps and drinks herpetology. Yeah, I have to make the comment today now that my mind's waning that proteges have now elevated to become the mentor for a lot of people under him.
Yeah, Brad's certainly a fountain of information. We're talking to him when we were doing the latest field guide, and he pointed out a couple of little errors that we had in the earlier books and goes, this doesn't go as far as this and this is that. And it's like, it's bloody brilliant. It's great to be able to make those little corrections. We both really appreciate when we get that constructive criticism. It allows us to fix those little minor errors and ensure that, grow from the knowledge and also ensure that the information that we're putting out there is accurate and can be always improved upon. We always hope, and I'm pretty sure you're the same, is that if anyone finds a little error or anything like that, I certainly appreciate getting a message about it and going, hey, you cocked this up on page X, Y, or Z, because at the end of the day, it means you can fix it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You need the feedback anyway, because you know what you've written and you just go straight over the top of.
That's the prick of it, isn't it? Your brain reads what you should have written as opposed to what you've actually written.
Yeah. It almost interprets what you meant to say, and because you meant to say it. Reviewing your own stuff is problematic because you don't see those things as incorrect.
Do you think that might be one of the reasons why that Reptiles and Frogs of the Perth region, one of my favourite books, Reptiles in the Australian Bush, do you think because you had the four of you guys all working on it together, being yourself, Brad Marion, Rob Brown Cooper and Dave Robertson, do you reckon that's why it was so good, is because the four of you were working on it together and you're all sort of reading each other's stuff?
Probably to a degree, but the problem when you got multiple authors is everyone has different writing styles.
Yeah.
That too.
Yeah, so we'd share around these different sections and that, and it is difficult because of the different writing styles, but the editors from publishers tend to be able to sort it out to a greater extent.
Yeah. Are you working on anything like that these days? Are you working on any little projects you can tell us about?
Always working on something. I don't like to say too much because I've got a paper with the WA naturalist on having a herp, and I toned it right down, but there's still a bit of controversy there. And Paul Doherty is basically the senior editor, and he said, But as I said to him, that's the bloody history. You can't sanitise it. It's sanitised enough, but he wants to, I think if he's going to allow it to go in, he's going to, I got an email from him today, that's why I mentioned it, but I think he wants to sanitise it even more, which will detract from the whole damn thing, because the history's the history, and it was a battle,
You might be able to tell him that this stuff's already been published in Monitor, because all that stuff when you guys were fighting with Calm about getting the reptile keeping into the hobby I mean, most of the listeners, any of the WA listeners, with the exception of a few, won't remember the fact that you weren't actually able to keep reptiles privately in WA until the early 2000s, wasn't it?
Yeah, 2003 it was.
Yeah. And I remember reading the shit fights that you guys were having when you were lobbying CALM at the time to try and sort out how you were going to get a keeping structure together, and it was a bloody nightmare.
Oh, it was a nightmare, and it takes so much of our time. 13 years.
Yeah.
Took a long time. I mean, you got to take your hat off. Brad was the vice president. Rob was the secretary and snake buster coordinator. And Dave Robinson did the treasurer's secretary's bit for a while as well, one of our committee members. Bruce George was the executive minder. Oh, we thought the government was going to come after us and cull us. We thought they had a hit out for us, so we made a special position. And I mean, did we get in the poop from our members for doing that? Because Bruce's title was executive minder to the executive member.
Well, as long as the adversary was taller than about 6 foot, Bruce would struggle, I think. He wasn't a very tall fella.
No. I mean, his nickname was Barnacle Bill. He'd drown in 15 centimetres of water. Amazingly nice bloke.
Yeah.
We gave him the position as media liaison officer because it's a case of not telling a book by its cover. He's such a sweet, loving sort of a fella. I mean, that's the trouble. He loves sitting on our laps. He'd jump on you when he hadn't seen you for a while and want to cuddle you and kiss you. I mean, we was the Western Australian Society of Amateur Herpetologists. Me and Brad and Rob Brown Cooper and that, we weren't negotiators. So to get to where we got, we had to set up a CALM subcommittee, the liaison subcommittee, and those guys, that's Jamie Stewart, Simon Ball and Mike Lynch, they had a more reserved way of saying things.
Yeah.
So, they did the final negotiations with the minister and the department to actually get the whole thing off the ground. But a lot of people probably don't realise the history. They've got a keeping system in place, but a lot of those people can now contribute because of that groundwork that was done.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty incredible legacy to leave. The fact that there's literally thousands and thousands of legal reptile keepers in WA now, and that's largely thanks to the efforts of a very few amateurs, I suppose, and they were the ones that got it across the line, because I guarantee you the bureaucrats did not want to allow people to keep reptiles because it was easier for it to make it a ban.
Yeah. And even in the old regulations, there was a licence called a Reg 12A licence, which was a licence to keep and breed native animals apart from birds. The Reg 12B was a licence for the aviculture. Yeah. But as it turned out, we didn't realise we needed new legislation and that they basically did a whole set of new regs and legislation to cater for the keeping. But no, seems to be going all right. I don't hear too many complaints. I'm not involved in it anymore myself. I don't think any of the other guys are, right? Maybe Simon Ball does it a little bit with it. But,
but I think they've been able to add a few species to their list now. But the reality of it is because they had
compared to the rest of the...
Yeah, but I suppose it's harsh now. It looks harsh, but when they had nothing at all, it was a pretty good start. True. And the fact that they've been able to add to it still is pretty good. So.
Oh, yeah. It's growing. The list is growing and that, and you've got that starting point, and a lot of people able to participate that weren't previously allowed to participate.
Definitely. What's your go-to herping gear or a bit of equipment that you take away with you that you just can't live without?
Besides a mirror and a squat over.
Well, there's the mirror. But, I suppose, the camera's number one. No matter what equipment you got with you,
you need the means of recording it.
To find something and not capture an image.
Yeah, no.
You can always improvise with other pieces of equipment. But, I'd like to have access to bags in case it's something that requires bagging so I can kill the time of day to get a good image. I have a small hook I hang on the belt, and I use that for digging or for a whole range of things. it also allows me to manage something a bit large and flighty. I've always got to have me coffee and the Waco full of beer, and I don't have to eat, and I've not drank water for 50 years, but they tell me there's water in me beer and me coffee. But,
don't egg Scott on. He's probably got all of his bowel,
yeah, I've had a bloody great time.
Ever done yourself a mischief out in the scrub?
Well, most of my mischief's usually caused by my enthusiasm again. Even a little Modesta or a Pagona, a bearded dragon running across the road, I've got to have a closer look at it. And a number of times I've been running through spinifex or long grass and come up short because I ran into a small termite mound or an old strand of barbed wire because the fence has fallen down. The fronts of my legs have taken a real flogging. Well, yeah, I've taken a few bites, but we don't talk about that.
Can we talk briefly about your interaction with a Mulga snake?
I've had a few of them.
The one that got you a little membership to a certain society.
2016 one.
Yeah, I reckon the one that
18.
I reckon one that got you that membership to a certain society here in Australia.
Yeah. Well, I was going from one job to the next. I think I finished it on the Friday, and at Yandy mine site, the BHP site. It's BHP and Rio Tinto down that road, but BHP I was at. And, I'm moving to a place, I call it the Giver Flat, cracking clay it is, but there's a lot of herp there.
Yeah.
It's fairly open, so it's a nice place if you're going to photograph stuff. So I whip in there, there's an old gravel pit, and the next morning the plan is to take some shots. And I'd picked up this 1.6 metre female Mulga snake, and I had cut out a beer carton so I could use it as a hide box.
Yeah.
I put her in there, I lift the beer carton and go to take a photo. She moves her head. Bugger! To lift the beer carton, I just flicked it out of the way. I had to use my hook to drag it back, and to do that, I had to take the hook off the snake, and I'm holding the snake by the tail so she doesn't do a runner, and manipulating the beer carton to get her back under it, and she flicked up and grabbed me on the left hand. Index finger, and typical of Mulga, she hangs on and has a bit of a chew. I get her off and put her back into the bag, and lost interest in getting any more photos, and put a pressure bandage on and weathered the storm. I got pretty crook, but survived the whole experience, and the finger decomposed, and I get back home and the wife can smell me coming through the back door. She says, "What happened to you?" And I'm not going to tell her when I'm in the field, but I'm more frightened of a snake. And she says, "You've got to go to the bloody doctors." And this was 3 weeks later, and it was pretty rotten. I went and saw my doctor. Okay, she ganged up with the daughters. I've only got daughters. So I did the right thing. I went to the doctors. He's an old bloke like me, pretty pragmatic. He says, "I'll do the right thing too. I'll send you down to the surgeon." So I go to see the surgeon, and it was lucky that he was an old bloke too. So, yeah, we were having a bit of a joke about it. Most people get bitten by a snake. They don't pass out in the scrub and wake up 5 hours later. By a Mulga snake. But he said he can take the finger off, or you can do your paper, and I documented the whole thing. And his main advice was, from a medical perspective, keep it covered in like betadine or one of those topical antibiotics. So I just dipped the finger in, each time I dressed it, dipped the finger in a bottle of betadine, and that was mainly to stop infection in the bone.
Yeah, okay.
And I weathered the storm all right. The end of the finger fell off, and now the bed of the fingernail must go back a long way, because now the fingernail grows from a long way back to the second knuckle, and it's like a razor blade. Then I chase the grandkids around with it, and I can scratch myself in places like I could never scratch myself before.
Yeah,
lucky you've got that mirror.
the only reason I brought it up is because I read that paper, great interest, and there's some photos of that finger of yours, a book on Australasian lapids that you graciously provided to us. So that was certainly an interesting one.
I forgot about that. Growing up in the time I did, Eric Worrell was still alive, and he was always talking about his snake bites. Yeah. I was always fascinated. In fact, the first one I documented of my own was an old typewriter I borrowed in a hospital after a bite from a red-bellied black snake. But I just found it fascinating to have that first-hand information.
Yeah, it's not, at the same time, it's fascinating, but it's not bloody fun to be going through it, though. I've been down that road myself a few times, and it's not a hell of a lot of fun to deal with.
No, well, I don't know if you ever saw the photo. I put a photo up on Facebook. Busho, when he's normal, and Busho, I think it was, I took a selfie after I put the pressure band in.
Yeah.
I was starting to look a bit crook. Yeah, it looks like father and son.
Yeah, there's a...
Father to get the photo. No. It starts with them, but Brad had a similar situation after a master's snake bite. The crown snake is much larger.
Yeah, that's it, mate, that's it. But I suppose it goes to show, right, it's that argument when people talk about dangerously venomous and all the rest of it, is that, you know, a foreign protein in your body is not designed to be there, and any sort of envenomation has the potential to seriously knock you around, particularly if you've made a mistake previously or been exposed to snake venom. They start to think too that even urates in snake poo and things like that could potentially cause an allergy, and that's how some people develop an allergic reaction to snake venom too.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think people who keep snakes and work with snakes and work with venoms and that are problematic to start with from a medical management perspective.
Yeah, most definitely. The story I heard with regards to your finger is you got a certain certificate as well. Is that true?
Yes. Yes, well, I'd heard some time previous that Neville Burns, Sydney Herp. See, I knew him as a boy and went into the army and that, and we lost contact till further down the track. But he'd lost a finger after a bite from a red-bellied black snake.
Yeah.
And he must have heard about my experience because he sent me a certificate. I've got it here. And, I'm now vice president of the Four-Fingered Fang Club.
That sounds like bloody Nev. He's a rat bag to have a bit of a laugh, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, I think it comes from the turf, doesn't it? But that camaraderie, we all generally look after each other and can have a bit of a joke. And I suppose someone standing at the back of the camp probably wonders, what are these blokes laughing about? Chewed on by snake.
I remember one of the first or second times I met Nev, I was taking some photos and I said to him, do you mind if I take a photo of your hand just when I'm talking about snake bite? And he goes, yeah, no worries. And he puts out his left hand. And I said, I want the one that's missing a finger, if that's all right. And he goes, you want the deformed one? Yeah, okay, fair enough. and so he had a bit of a laugh about it. But when I took the photo, he said, the thing was, most people think that the venom was the reason I lost my finger, but the venom didn't cause me to lose my finger at all. It was the infection after the fact that caused him to take the finger. So... you know, at the end of the day, right, the snake bite still caused it because his finger wouldn't have got bloody infected if he hadn't been bitten by the snake, I suppose. So, you know.
That's not uncommon. You know, a lot of people aren't aware of it. They can have a bite and be discharged, and several weeks later, the infection can manifest itself.
Yeah, I think I'd rather stay away from the pointy end if I can bloody avoid it.
Yeah. My problem's being a loner, always out there by myself. Yeah, down on your hands and knees, buggerising around with these snakes straight out of the bushes. They're not all friendly. I mean, I tried to sweet talk them, but some of them ladies just don't take any notice. Maybe in my younger day it might have been better.
Yeah, that's it, mate.
Yeah.
What are the top 3 reptile books you recommend our listeners check out?
Most of them aren't available. Ty or Iper and Iper.
Love you, Busho.
There's a couple of great books there. But it's funny, again, when you're young and impressionable. My Bible when I was a kid was the second edition of Kinghorn Snakes of Australia.
Yeah.
Because of the bloody drawings in it was so bloody lifelike and whatnot. But probably after that, Worrell's Song of the Snake because of the herping trips.
The stories in the Song of the Snake are bloody great, aren't they? Going down to Chapel Island and chasing tigers, and that's still probably one of the most enigmatic stories for me to sit back and read. It's an amazing book, Song of the Snake.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't complain about my bloody life. Yeah, I often play a song. I've got the CD in the car. I should send you one, but a bloke named Colin Slim Whitman, he sings for a band called the Chuckleberries, and he's an Aboriginal fella, but he's always been fascinated with what I do, making a quid bloody chucking snakes around. He didn't particularly like anything other than King Browns, and they had to be the glass ones. not the slender ones out on the flat, but he did this song, The Snake Man, and I drove the family crazy with it. I love it, because I like a bit of fancy footwork when I'm by myself after a skinful of beer out on the flat. It's a good tune to dance to. I'm fascinated by the fact that he was fascinated by what I did, that they normally write songs about dead people. I can assure you I'm not quite dead yet.
Not just yet, mate.
Nowhere near it, Busho, nowhere near it. What's your unicorn species?
I probably haven't got one. I see a little Monidia grey-eye now, a little grey skink, and I get just as excited.
So you found everything you've ever wanted to find out in the scrub?
Well, I can go anywhere. Like 3 trips out to Ilkelka, and one of them we get a bloody taipan, a Western Desert taipan. But it's everything else. It just overwhelms me. So I'm happy with what I find. I don't seem to have anything I want to target, or I can walk down the backyard and see a gills monitor or gills goanna, and I'm just bloody happy to see it and wander along behind it while it goes about its business. I don't know. It probably releases chemicals and that just make me feel so damn relaxed and privileged to have seen the bloody thing.
Yeah. Is there anywhere that you've always wanted to herp but never got there?
Oh, it's bloody, well, the whole world. At the end of the day, the whole bloody world, all these bloody emails from people in India coming over, we'll put you up and we'll go out and herp. But life's too short. You just can't do it all. Even if I got out there, I like to pretend I'm just as active as I was, but the old knees have slowed me down marginally.
Well, I keep saying to you to come over to Queensland and we'll take you out chasing critters, and you keep fucking saying that you can't do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the problem is my wife has been so gorgeous in allowing me to participate in my interests for so long that now I like to, and when I take her anywhere, I can't participate in herpetology. I try and sneak a shot now and again on the critter, but paying her back for allowing me to have such a liberal run with herpetology.
That's it, mate. That's it. No, look, it's a great thing.
Talking about funniest things that happen on trips.
Yeah.
Been out to Lake Disappointment with the boys over here, and our vehicle was in the lead, me and Bruce Budry in the Toyota in the lead, and there's a convoy of 3 vehicles. We'd also been out to Lake Mackay. Yeah. And we're cruising along. We get to where we're going, and where's me clothes? Anyone seen a black garbage bag full of clothes? Bounced out the back of the Toyota. Brad pulls up in the vehicle he was in, and they have a look in it and say, oh, it's someone's clothes in here. Oh, they must be just rubbish in the back. Quaked it into the bush, and I wore for the next 2 weeks the same pair of bloody undies because all my clothes. And we couldn't find the spot where they'd dumped, and we didn't go back anyway because we'd already travelled for another hour or 2 up the track.
Oh no!
Those undies would have had their own bloody fucking legs by the end of it.
Oh, yeah, it's not uncommon for me. I take pairs away for 2 weeks, and I only bring one pair home because I bury the others under rocks. And we won't go there.
I wonder how many people have been flipping rocks.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. It's only when you go into a shop or something or a roadhouse that you realise something's wrong because everyone moves away from it. But just speaking of the rubbish, my clothing getting chucked into the scrub. In 2014, we were out at Ilkelka, and on this trip, this is usually me and Bruce, and we've done a few out there, but on this trip there was Brad Murray and Simon Pinn, he's a photographer.
Yeah.
And Thomas Rasmussen, and he was one of our junior was our members. You know, he joined the club when he was about 14. He does a fair bit of work in the field these days, environmental surveys and that. But I mean, you know, we're going out into the scrub. We're hard men. And he borrows his mum and dad's caravan. There's 500 kilometres to travel east of Laverton, and some of the road is pretty atrocious, bloody corrugated road. Me and Bruce, we left the camp. This was coming home after a couple of weeks out there. We left the camp probably half hour behind the caravan, and we're getting probably 130 k's from Laverton. We started seeing stuff, you know, old swags, bloody clothing and mattresses and whatnot on the road. And we thought, oh, someone's going to the tip and they haven't bloody secured their load. Anyway, we eventually come up to the caravan, and the arse end of the caravan had fallen out, and all it is. We're pulling up and shaking it and just hoiking that into the bush. So it was payback for Brad. It'd be all right if it was a bloody off-road caravan, but it was just one of those plywood caravans. I think it was never repaired. I think it went, once they used it, then tied the bloody back end up, tried to stop anything else falling out. They used it just to take their gear home, and then it probably went to the tip.
It would have been popular with his parents.
I was about to say his olds would have been bloody impressed by that, I'm sure.
No, I don't think they would have been. Yeah, I think he was living at home, but he had to move out after that.
What's the craziest thing you've ever done, Busho?
Oh, I probably haven't done anything crazy. I'll just have a think about that for a second. Most people think, even when I'm serious, most people think I'm crazy. So, I try to maintain a fairly low profile and not draw attention to myself. Really, I mean, a lot of people are amazed that I eat about once a week when I'm in the field. I have guilty pleasures when I'm at home. I love me Scotch fillet, but it's got to be cauterised and still cold inside. I can't eat it with veggies. I mean, they'll kill you. I evolved. I moved forward from the gatherer. I'm just a hunter today.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with a bit of roadkill for something to eat, is there?
Oh, no, nothing wrong. I mean, Australia's highways out there, I mean, they're the supermarkets of the world. I mean, there's more beef jerky you can shake a stick at. And if you follow on a road train, you can pick up some nice fresh cuts of meat too.
Yeah.
I have a cookbook called Roadkill Cuisine. I'm buying you a copy of that.
Yeah. Only eating Scotch fillet these days. You can stick your roadkill. He is soft in older age.
Yeah.
From a herpetological perspective, you had one of our top female herpetologists at the Queensland Museum, Jeanette Kovacevic.
Yeah.
And, I got into a punch-up with her one time, but it was only over. I presented a paper on the modern myth at the Second World Congress, and she came on about the rediscovery of microlepidotus and on about how toxic its venom is. And I said, if you're a mouse. And then we got into a punch-up over that.
For a second, I thought you actually meant a physical punch-up, and I was like, I'm editing this bit out as well, Busho, in case you're telling people you just punched a woman.
You're talking about Jeanette.
Yeah.
Jeanette. Yeah,
just a verbal disagreement. I mean, I love ladies, but I come from a long family. My Auntie Ethel, she lived to 103. She was a senior executive in the 1960s for Burley Bras.
Oh, wow.
Women were fighting for equality back then, and she had already mastered it, and she was my richest auntie. But 103 she lived to.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Full facilities at that age?
Oh, yeah. She did really good. She ended up moving into an old people's home, but I think the hips were giving out in the end. But
wow.
She needed to do more snake catching courses with you, mate.
Yeah. But when I was a young lad, there was 10 million people in Australia. When she was a young girl, there was 5 million. Shows you how we've grown in population, and the country is primarily desert, and most of the people are around the periphery of it or around the coastal parts.
Yeah.
What bit of advice would you give to a novice herper?
Oh, I think that's pretty easy. If you've got an interest, just take your time. No, there's no rush. You've got the rest of your life. Yeah. And enjoy that interest. And don't go in gung-ho. If you want to find something and photograph it, enjoy the hunt. And if you don't find it, don't be put off by it, because it's another great reason to return to that area. Yeah. So always maintain that positive state of mind.
We had a viewer question from Eric Wattrell. Eric's asked, herping WA for such a long time, what is your favourite species to find and what is your fondest memory herping?
I've got a soft spot for the first species, the first genus of snake I was ever bitten by was Dementia. Yeah. The 10-year-old. They personify snakes, that morphology, that slender, fast, big-eyed, alert. So I'd have to say, it doesn't matter what species of Dementia, but Dementias are probably my favourite. Yeah. As far as, what was his other question?
And what was your fondest herping memory?
Oh, gee whiz, I mean, they're all bloody terrific. I suppose going to places we'd never been before with a group of blokes. So you take Lake Mackay, that's on the WA Northern Territory border. And I suppose what makes that trip so good, it was for 3 weeks. So we're out there for 3 weeks running traps and that. And there was a lot of yahooing and wild singing, and I even got crook on that one. And I met a bloke, he was a nursing sister at Kirakara Aboriginal community named Dr. Bob. Well, he wasn't named Dr. Bob, his name's Sister Bob, but I couldn't find myself calling a bloke sister, so I called him Dr. Bob. Yeah. And I was talking to a bloke on one of the mine sites, paramedic, and he says, oh, no, the proper designation is Mr. Sister. But I got a feeling he might have been taking the mickey out of me. But that is a nursing category. So I did a little doco on that and dedicated it to Dr. Bob.
There you go.
Do you have any regrets?
No, that's what I'm always having. No regrets. Regret will come when I'm on my deathbed. I'll probably have you'll probably think it's a grimace, but I'll be smiling. And I'll be looking forward to the next adventure. So even when I'm on my deathbed, I'll expect to recover and stand up and get about.
Yeah. We've got a fairly standard question that we ask. Have you ever witnessed or experienced misogyny in your career? And in your opinion, what can be done to stamp it out?
I don't think, to be honest, and 35 years, a lot of that was within the mining environment where it was a male-dominated area. But I've not experienced it. But I tend to initiate my presentations with telling them that I'm one of the few heterosexuals left on the planet, and if the snake gives you too much trouble, I'll rescue you, and the blokes are all on their own.
Fair enough.
I appreciate women. My courses, there's a lot of preamble and a lot of lateral stuff, but again, it's all about that communications to relax the participants. And I find blokes like a wife, and they have a wife to substitute for their mothers. But women probably would have done a far better job than blokes historically on this planet, because women have an empathy with the environment that a lot of blokes don't have. Yeah. Scott and I have this empathy for the environment, but women have a mothering empathy. And the planet would probably be a lot better from a human perspective if women were running the place. But the reason women aren't is because we kept them barefoot and pregnant. We took over.
You see now in industry that women do a better job when it comes to driving around machinery. They do a better job when it comes to working with equipment because they don't break it. They take care of the equipment. They're better at it than the men when they're operating it.
Oh, yeah.
It's this whole idea that certainly in industry that...
Next time I break something, I'm totally reminding you of this conversation.
For sure. Like that, it is now that there's a preference in a lot of mines and stuff like that now to have the women driving the trucks because they don't break them like the blokes.
Yeah. Women will admit when they're tired.
Yeah.
Need a break. But a lot of the blokes are too macho they look upon it as a weakness when they're having trouble keeping their eyes open as they drive that haul truck down into the pit or whatever.
But I think that's society too, though. Society pressures the man into thinking that he has to do this, he has to provide, he has to do what it takes to bring home the bacon for the wife sort of thing. Yeah. And I don't think that's a fair expectation on a man.
No.
Oh, no.
It's not linked to gender at all. It's not linked to sex. At the end of the day, right, it's about being a good person regardless of your make, model or serial number.
Yeah, look what they're trying to stamp out now, or the abuse that women suffer at the hands of their partners. I just can't understand that mentality. You know, You've got to be weak to participate in it from a bloke's perspective to start with, haven't you?
Definitely. All right, well, let's lighten the mood a little bit, and we'll throw you under the basking spot.
So we have a little segment, Busho, called 60 Seconds Under the Basking Spot. Are you ready?
We'll see how this goes.
Wine or beer?
Oh, beer, every day of the week.
Accomplice or ringleader?
Probably an accomplice.
I don't know. Order or spontaneity?
Oh, spontaneity every day of the week. That gets me into trouble too.
Hook or hand?
Probably hand, yeah. I like the fool things.
Yeah. Sweet or savoury?
Sweet.
Driver or passenger?
Driver.
Do you cannonball into the pool or do you go in one toe at a time?
Oh, no, get in there quick. take the pain.
Rip that Band-Aid off, you reckon?
Yeah.
Tidy or messy?
Probably overly tidy. Judy's always going crook at me because I plant everything in a row. Everything's got to line up, or I hate seeing stuff on the floor. It's probably a flaw in my makeup.
Glass half full or glass half empty?
The glass is always half full, even when it's empty.
Do you prefer a phone call or a text?
Text, because the problem with the phone is you've got your hand on the phone and you can't do things with both hands. I love text. And text you can get back at your leisure. Yeah. I hate phones too because they tie you up.
And the all-time question, Busho, does pineapple go on a pizza?
No bloody way.
Yes. It certainly does not, does it?
Sweet and sour pork at the bloody Chinese restaurant. They don't mix. You can have your sweets for dessert.
Exactly. What's the one takeaway you'd like the audience to get from this episode, Busho?
Well, I don't know whether it carries through from my personality, but I think the bottom line is to enjoy it. We can get into punch-ups over things, but as long as the punch-ups are minor, I think at the end of the day, if you've got an interest in herpetology, we should be one big happy family.
Yeah, for sure. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you want to say before we close out?
I'd give some kudos to Wazar and the keeping. I can't think of anything else.
How can our listeners find you, Busho?
Probably camped under an acacia out in the scrub or heading east. You'd be amazed the number of people that find me in the bush anyway, especially if they live in the area and they're going past. So that many strangers pull up, and most of them usually just want to get a photo with Baz, reptile.
Oh, I thought you were going to say they turned up, found your knickers, and were trying to give them back.
But yeah, it's funny. I get pulled over all the time. And I got pulled over going into Yogu one time because it was a copper. I thought, shit, what have I done wrong? The seatbelt's on. I'm not speeding. And they just wanted me to go and do a presentation to kids in the primary school.
Heard of a phone?
Yeah, well, I do that sort of thing. I try to stay on the right side of the law. Every time I went through Dalwallinu, there was an old sergeant there, and every constable that went through this is in the wheat belt, every constable that went through the police station, if he saw me on the road, he'd pull me over to get a snake out so he could get a photograph of the constable with a blanket pipe or a carpet pipe around his neck. And the only reason he did it was to get the facial expression. Just come out of the academy in a wheat belt and there's a shitload of Western Browns out there, some bloke chucking a snake around his neck.
And he's thinking, what the fuck have I got myself into?
But I mean, it's great, yeah. I got stuck one time. I was going out to an Aboriginal community, again, just to do a presentation for the kids. And we had this priority country skills program that I'd won the contract for, and I'm heading out there, and there's a creek called Orilla Creek, and the Orilla Creek's got about a metre of water over it, and it's like a causeway. There's no bridge or anything, so I parked up, and I'm sitting there rolling out my swag and boiling the billy, thinking I might be there for a few days, and this little light aircraft goes around, circles, lands on the road, and the bloke comes to see me, and it's the manager from Landor Station, which is on the other side, on the Mount Augusta side of the Orilla Creek. And he says, "Are you stuck, mate?" And I says, "Yeah." He says, "Yeah, I've just been flying around checking how extensive the flooding is." But there was no rain where we were. The rain was further to the northeast and was flooding the creeks flowing down to the coast. But he says, "Where you heading?" I says, "Oh, I'm going into the community at Mount Augustus." And he says, "I'll go back to the homestead, and when I get there, I'll give him a ring and tell him you're stuck," which he did. Anyway, a couple of hours later, I think there was about 3 vehicles, 3 Toyotas came out to get me across the causeway, but there was a metre of water across it. At the time, I was driving an EA Falcon, so I mean, it was like a boat. It's close to the ground. So anyway, I followed them, and they took me up along through the bush, by the way, in the Falcon, and found a place where the river was quite wide, so it was shallow.
Yeah.
Got me across. I went into the community. I did my presentations and whatnot. And I'm coming out, and when I get to Rilla Creek from the other side, from the west, the water's still over it. It had dropped about 10 centimetres. So I parked up again and blowed me down. It's the first time a packet of tobacco saved me life, because this old rattly bloody Toyota Cruiser Utes coming towards me from the Mika Farah side, and he comes across and he says, "How you going, mate? Are you stuck here?" I says, "Yeah." He says, "I'm just whipping into the community to get some tobacco on the way back," and this community's about 60 or 70 k's further up the road. He says, "When I come back, we'll see if we can get you across." So I said to him, "I've always got a spare pack of tobacco here. Do you want a 50-gram pack of tobacco? It'll save you the 140-kilometre round trip, and you can pull me across if you like." So he got me across, and the only reason I didn't float away, there was a little step on the right-hand side, or the southern side of the causeway, and the Falcon floated but came up against this step and stopped me going over the edge.
Wow.
But he got me across, and he just married this English woman, so he couldn't let me go. He says, "You've got to come back to the Donga and meet the missus." He said, "I go back there. Now, keep in mind, I give him a packet of tobacco." I don't know what the price of the tobacco was back then, but I reckon I drank twice as much of his booze, his beer, than the packet of tobacco was, because he just wouldn't let me go. And I did all right out of that and got the job done into the boot. But it's funny, you'll see a grader driver and he'll wave you down, when you're going past and you get on the radio and say, "All right, if I come around," And they'll say, "Oh, you want to pull up and we'll have a yarn," So you pull up and have a yarn, and before you know it, you're back at his buddy camp drinking his beer too. He's out there doing this sort of work, hiding from the missus, has got a mate that's order out for him. But it's just so Australia, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just so Australia.
Well, this has been bloody great.
Yeah, it has. It has. Thanks for listening to the Cold-Blooded Contributions podcast. Massive thank you to our guest, Busho. We really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to us. Usually we'll be releasing our podcast monthly, so make sure you follow us so you don't miss out on an episode. Give the Cold-Blooded Contributions podcast a like on Facebook so you don't miss any updates, giveaways or guest announcements. The links discussed in today's podcast will be in the show notes. And remember, always trust your creativity. It's intelligence having fun.